Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Wednesday, February 26th. Derek VanRiper, Eno Sarris here with you with the sixth and final installment of our 2025 team preview series. We saved the AL East for last. And, we have a meeting right at the end of the show, so no time for pleasantries. I don't care how your Tuesday went. I'm just going to get right.
Not well.
Your Wednesday's going worse, though.
Just a lot of yelling for the morning. I was also thinking, just really quickly, I was thinking, what would be cool to have like a never-ending supply of? And I thought, well, a never-ending beer would be great, but it would get warm and that would suck. So, never-ending supply of dog poop bags.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
How many times have you gone on the walk and they poop and you realize you don't have the bags?
Well, the worst one was on Christmas morning this year because no one's outside walking their dog at 11 a.m. on Christmas morning. So finding someone else to hand you a bag is not great. I got lucky. Someone did come around the corner just in time, and I could kind of flag him down. I looked like an insane person. It was
because it's
my
also
best moment.
Cold as hell where you
It's
are.
freezing. I'm angry. I'm in my pajamas, and I'm
About to pick it up with your hands.
I was looking for like anything I could find in my pockets that would
leaf.
I could make a bag out of, like MacGyver, and just be like, "Oh, this is gonna have to do." And thankfully, someone walked by, and much to their surprise, they were asked for a bag and happily rescued me. So people are kind sometimes, but never-ending pasta. They've tried that. Not delicious. Gets old eventually. Just drink your beer out of a Yeti unless it needs to be in a tulip. That'd be my advice. So if it's a beer that can live and still be good, not in a tulip, just put it into a Yeti and it'll stay cold.
But it'd also just be the same flavor over and over again, unless it was
also not great. Well, you had the keg when I was out there.
That's right. The keg we couldn't kill.
You tried to like bury it in the backyard so it'd stay colder, and just there's no way. There's no way around that. You did a really good job on that, though. I'm still to this day impressed.
But still a little bit sloshing around at the bottom. They gave it back.
That's still, given the circumstances, you did well. Join our Discord if you got beverages or a never-ending supply of something you'd like. Let us know what it would be. I think the bags is a good one for pet waste. That's very helpful. I actually keep an extra backup in my coat pocket now, so that same thing on Christmas won't happen to me again.
Smart.
Got to live in a place where you wear the coat all the time, though. So, hey, winter for the win yet again. Let's get to the team previews, though. Let's start with the Yankees. And the main question, I think, when you look at the 2025 Yankees is, did they pivot well after Juan Soto's departure in free agency to the Mets? In on the hitting side, Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt. In on the pitching side, Max Fried, Devin Williams, and Fernando Cruz. I mean, that's a pretty good plan B overall. You're not going to find a one-for-one equivalent of Juan Soto on the trade market or in free agency. The closest thing would have been if they had been the team that traded for Kyle Tucker, right? But they spread that money around and got a few pretty big upgrades for this roster. And one criticism we had of the Yankees throughout last season, or one observation anyway, was just that they were dependent upon Judge and Soto having a historically great season for a duo. And there were questions about some of the bottom half contributors in that lineup, right? So when you start to look at the Yankees lineup now, do you think they're at least close enough to what they were in 2024 to be similar in quality as a run-producing unit?
It seems a little bit more spaced out. By the Bat X, you've got 9 players that are average or better, with Jason Dominguez being the 9th. You're going to have some youth infusion with Dominguez and Wells, and to some extent a full season of Jazz Chisholm, who, by the way, had insane, full season projections if you kind of just take his Yankee time and blow it up. If you give him 600 plate appearances, what he did as a Yankee, he'd have 35 homers, 60 plus stolen bases, and a 270 average. So If you want to get excited about Jazz Chisholm, it's a new Alfonso Soriano, I guess, maybe for the team.
That's exciting. I think the things about Jazz that caught my eye, yes, he ran a lot more once he got to New York. And then, of course, the power boost that comes from playing half your games in Yankee Stadium. So to see, a 2040 season from him last year, it's not surprising based on the player that we thought Jazz could be when he broke in with the Marlins. But it's a reminder that health has been a major problem. This is a C- D+ health grade player, even off of a career best 621 plate appearances last year, where there was a late season stint on the IL, which fortunately didn't require surgery, and he was able to get back from it. At the time of the injury, it was an elbow injury. It didn't look like a certainty that Jazz was going to make it back, but he did make it back for the postseason. So we talked about him as an early second-round pick. That's where he goes, kind of a toss-up with Jarren Duran from the Red Sox, and I believe in what we're seeing from Jazz. I just think you have to build in some safety nets as far as less injury plagued players go in your foundation if you're going to take that shot on Jazz Chisholm early. But I do think in terms of the 2025 Yankees, it's another addition that just happened to be at last year's trade deadline that does change the look of this lineup compared to where they were in the first half of last season.
I mean, he has a hurt elbow that I think it's headed for Tommy John. I would assume that, that might have something to do with where he plays on the field. And so I think that's a little bit of the Cody Bellinger acquisition. Put Cody in center so that you can put Jazz at second, the less stress on the arm. I think there's a risk that if the team isn't good, that at some point Jazz shuts it down and gets the surgery, because for position players, you can get back on the field in 6 months. So you could just be like, September, this isn't a good year for us, I'm out, And as for the chance of that happening this year, I don't know if I'm picking the nits or not, but I have some nits to pick, which is that Paul Goldschmidt is really old, And when I said that they had 9 guys that were projected to be above 100 WRC plus, one of the guys was Ben Rice, who's projected for 71 plate appearances. Another was Trent Grisham, who's the backup center fielder. And one is Paul Goldschmidt, who we're thinking can bounce back. And, I do think his swing, sets up pretty well, that kind of opposite field swing for a righty, going to the short porch. I think that sets up pretty well for him, but was last year 100 WRC plus, is 37 years old, and may not bounce back. So, if you start looking around the depth chart, you can say, okay, what if Jazz's elbow is not good? Anthony Volpe doesn't take a step forward. Oswaldo Cabrera is not good at third base. Jason is up and down in left field, and Paul Goldschmidt is old. And Giancarlo Stanton, who has 2 tennis elbows, 2 of them goes down. It could the disaster percentage on this season is fairly large for a team this good. Am I crazy? Am I picking the nits?
Are you listening to WFAN when you wake up in the morning? What's wrong with you, man? This is a good team.
Yes, I guess that would be a lot of things going wrong, but
that's an above. That's so okay. So you described what I think would be the Yankees being the 2024 Braves in terms of injury luck. Right, it happens. It could definitely happen.
Wait, I said the only person I said was injured in that whole group was Chisholm, who is injured.
Yeah, but if Volpe doesn't take a step forward, he's still a good glove for shortstop that's probably only a little below league average with the stick, right? And I think Cody Bellinger's acquisition is maybe a little underrated. You put together the overlay of the what if Cody Bellinger played all of his 2024 games in Yankee Stadium? We know it doesn't work that way. You don't get to play half of them there, but you could see, and it's pretty easy because of the way right center field works in that ballpark.
Look at that cutout. It's like, oops, I want 8 more homers from Cody Bellinger. Also, This is home and away, so you want
right. You got to divide by 2.
Yeah,
but you could see about 6 more homers by that method. You see about a dozen balls that were either doubles or flyouts that would have gone over the fence for homers. So more power there. Bellinger has health concerns of his own, so you do have to factor that in. But I do think there's there's a little bit more upside on a few of the players in this lineup. It's not just relying on the Anthony Volpe step forward. Jason Dominguez could be really good. Jason Dominguez might not be an up and down guy. Jason Dominguez might show us all of the things that led to him being dubbed the Martian when he signed as an international free agent as a teenager, right? He might be that guy. He might be power.
Between him and Volpe, you're kind of like, one of these guys is going to be really good. Probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the other will just be kind of league average-ish.
Right. And I think that's fine. Austin Wells looked good as a secondary contributor in the lineup. Maybe you get another small step forward from him.
He's really good offensively for a catcher. He's almost like a left-handed Will Smith, in terms of like makes good contact, barrels the ball really well, takes walks. Like it's a good package there.
Yeah. So I think I'm a little more optimistic about this group, even though I understand where some of those concerns come from. Would I like them better if they had been the team that signed Alex Bregman? Sure. Who wouldn't be better with Alex Bregman on their roster, right?
I keep thinking that the Nolan Arenado to the Yankees is just like the most obvious thing. I don't know why they're not doing it.
You just think it's an inevitability? Like they're just going to wait too long to do it, basically?
I feel like they're just haggling over money.
Yeah.
I was looking at what Nolan Arenado is due, and if you were paying him on the open market for what his projections are, you'd be paying $12 million a win. Like, it's not even that bad. So maybe the Cardinals are like, we only want to pay like $5 or $10 million of this. And the Yankees are like, that's a little bit rough on our salary situation. We want you to pay half of that.
Right. So then it comes down to the quality of the players that would get sent back, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's where the discrepancies come from. But the other part of what they did is they added an impact starter, right? You add Max Fried to the equation. And you say, okay, well, maybe we're not going to score quite as many runs as we did last year, but we're probably going to be better in run prevention because we have Cole and Fried and Carlos Rodon, plus Luis Heel and Clark Schmidt as our 4 and 5. Marcus Stroman for now, an extra guy among the many starters that is in the 6 starter spot with a big salary that you look at and say, maybe some desperate team will come calling later in spring training if they just need some innings, or he's just the 6th starter and they'll find a way to make the pieces fit. But I think yet again, they've got a quality bullpen, and maybe it's even a little higher quality than it was a year ago. I think Devin Williams in short relief is an upgrade over Clay Holmes, even though Clay Holmes, as we talked about yesterday, is pretty interesting as a starting pitching project for the Mets. So, where does this rotation rank league-wide? Like, it seems like it's really strong, maybe with a little heightened risk because of Fried having some arm trouble that has slowed him down, and Carlos Rodon having a lot of arm issues that have plagued him at various points in his career.
Fangraphs has it 6th on the depth charts behind the Mariners, Red Sox, Braves, Phillies, and Dodgers. I don't know about that. That's a little surprising to me. I would have the Yankees rotation ahead of the Red Sox. I know Garrett Crochet, with his youth and his awesome stuff, may actually be the best pitcher in both rotations. But once you get past Crochet, I think I pick like 3 or 4 Yankees before I pick a Red Sox.
Yeah, I think so.
Crazy to say.
I think, and we're going to get to the Red Sox in a bit, I think there are some significant disagreements across projection systems about the quality of the Red Sox pitching. I think that is a big source of differentiation.
This one is like Zips and depth chart. Depth charts are Zips plus Steamer.
Yeah.
So that we will see. We are looking at oopsie when we look at the Red Sox rotation. You may have a different numbers you're looking at, but generally I love this rotation as much as Max Fried's forearm flexor tendon injury bothers me, and as much as his low strikeout rate bothers me. He's now like a 6-pitch wide mix home run suppressor. And he's going into a park where, I think that'll be a good fit for him because he'll suppress the lefties easily, and the righties don't have as much of an advantage. So I think he'll be fine in that park. The only actual worry I have for Fried is injury, and I think actually by signing him to such a long deal, what they did was they suppressed the average annual value of the deal for the luxury tax purposes, but they also were like, hey, so what if we miss a full year in here with Tommy John? We have him for 8. It's like, so what? One year he's not here. That's fine. So that's an interesting way to do things. I think I'm the high man of Garrett Cole. It sounds like I've been on a bunch of podcasts this week, and it seems like I'm the high man of Garrett Cole because I still have him in sort of the I forget exactly where, top 12. His stuff plus last year, Garrett Cole's, was the same as it was in 2023. The only difference was that he went to the cutter more than the slider. I think that was probably a little bit injury related, and I think he'll bring the slider back if he's feeling good, and some of the strikeouts will come back. And he was such a volume guy for so long that I'm hoping that this was just sort of a blip in the road for him. Rodon is as mercurial as they come, but he's at his best, is really good. And one thing that was really interesting about Rodon in the playoffs was that he seemed to have found a way to harness his emotions. He's always got that like no shirt, open top button, screaming, sweaty mentality. And I think he found a way to kind of rein it in and get fuel from that, but also not like destroy his command. So that'd be interesting if he did find something mentally there. And then Heel and Clark Schmidt are really just awesome player development wins for them. Just totally different pitchers that came through their system and produced awesome stuff. And then Stroman is really quality depth if he sticks around. And I think he should stick around because this isn't a rotation that you give an A health grade to overall. But I know that he's making some noise about wanting to start, and I don't know what you do with him if you don't start him.
Yeah, that could be a bit of a difficult situation, just depending on how a few things break over the course of the spring. But it could also just solve itself before the end of spring training too. If any one of those guys in the projected starting 5 go down with an injury, I'm with you though on Cole. I've thought he's been underdrafted the entire draft season. It was a nerve problem in his arm. It healed, came back, looked mostly like himself. I don't feel like a nerve thing is nearly as bad as a structural problem, with the ligament or something along those lines.
No ligament.
Yeah.
No, there was no grade 1 sprain. Oh, one last thing that's interesting about this team. They are doing something in the bullpen that no other team is doing. They are leaning really hard into right-on-right changeups. Luke Weaver, Devin Williams, Mark Leiter Jr., Fernando Cruz. These are all changeup geniuses. They're splitters and changeups, and they will throw them right on right. They're right-handed changeup guys. And I think part of it is the rest of the league is just not doing that. It's just like, and maybe part of it is home run suppression in a park that gives up homers,
Uh-huh.
But they're all like, they all have excellent strikeout rates. So you can't be like, oh, they're giving up soft contact. Well, Devin Williams says a 12 K9. He's not doing that. And Luke Weaver is projected for 12 K9. And Luke Weaver, that projection might be light on his K9, given that it's reaching back into starter days, He's been a revelation as a closer. So even if Devin Williams goes down, Luke Weaver is a great closer. I don't really like Mark Leiter Jr. that much, but I do like Ian Hamilton. I do like Fernando Cruz. So I think it's a pretty deep bullpen too.
Yep. Cruz looks like a little bit of an overlooked acquisition. He was brought in from Cincinnati in a trade that sent Jose Trevino, the backup catcher, out. So they'll miss Juan Soto because any team would, but I think they did a good job overall, kind of patching it up and finding a way to build another really good roster that should make a deep run. Looking at the PECOTA win total projections for these Yankees, 88.9 is the number. Too hot, too cold, or just right?
Seems too cold.
I thought the same.
I mean, as I was picking some nits, but seems too cold.
Seems a little bit too cold. I think they're a 94, 95 win team as they're constructed, unless the doomsday injury scenario hits. But I think Garrett Cole's going to get a couple IPAs with the boys. I think it's gonna happen in October. That's one of my favorites.
Wait, does that mean you think they're going to win it all?
I don't think IP. Doesn't he just do that like if they win a series? I think they're just going to at least go to the playoffs.
Zips has the Yankees at 89 for what it's worth. So
yeah, if Garrett Cole has 24 IPAs with the boys, then I think that means they win the World Series.
Okay.
To me, that's the difference. If we're looking at that, it'll be in Tom Brady's Super Bowl parade mode. Remember that after he won with the Bucks and he was just like almost falling out of the boat during the parade.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was ridiculous.
I'm, for most people, I don't recommend that level of drunkenness, but for Tom Brady, it was like a rare human moment where I kind of appreciated
and also
it.
For Garrett Cole, like Does he have a? He doesn't have a title with them, right? No.
Now with the Yankees.
And yet they've been so good while he's been there. Like I think he would. We might see an epic release from Garrett Cole if he wins. I mean, he's kind of mild mannered too, right? Like we might see a shirt tearing incident or something.
It's just double hazies just all over the place, just littering the streets of the Bronx. Let's move on to the Orioles, where I still just can't get on board with the pessimism that is like wafting around this team. I think they're still really good. Their window is wide
look
open.
At those projections for the hitters. They like, wow, dude, wow. You have this sorted by plate. No, you don't have it. Not yet.
Oh, hold on. There it is.
Look at that. Heston Kjerstad is the 10th guy by plate appearances, has a 106 WRC plus. Their 12th guy by plate appearances has a 101. Their 13th guy is a 102. And the guy I didn't mention has a 98 WRC plus. So they go 13th, and Kobe Mayo's 14th and 97.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to be even the slightest bit generous, you say they have 14 bats that are league average or better.
I mean, Dylan Carlson's below the fold on YouTube. He's got a 98 from the Bat X. Yeah. What? What is happening here? Love that Heston Kjerstad's their 10th by plate appearance projected player, because I have him everywhere. That doesn't bode well. I'm either loud right or loud wrong on Heston Kjerstad finally getting his chance this year. We didn't identify the 5 with the Yankees because I think that one's like one of the easiest 5s imaginable. If you just open up that depth chart, you'll see exactly who the core guys are. And I think with the Orioles, at least there's some room for debate, right? Obviously, Gunnar and Adley Rutschman. Rutschman being a catcher means you still have 4 more spots that you could kind of just play with as who could be everyday guys. I think Jordan Westberg is
play
one.
Rule of 6 and take Rutschman out if you want. 5 without him if you need.
So Gunnar, Westberg,
Westberg's a righty, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're not. Westberg's not a small side platoon guy. Nope.
No, I would bump him all the way up to 625, 640, whatever. Give him max.
I think so. And then Colton Cowser, he's a lefty, but I mean they were using him as the Mullins platoon.
Yeah, that's.
So I don't think they're that worried about his splits. And at a 116 projected WRC plus, you'd expect his left on left to be around league average.
Are we comfortably looking at Cowser and Mullins on a team that also has Tyler O'Neill? Who, man, Tyler O'Neill.
Mullins is not in my circle of trust, by the way.
I don't think he's in mine either. Well, he's a big side platoon guy for me now. Like right, they have luxury. Ramon Laureano's there.
That's the whole reason of Rule of 5 is that he's a platoon guy. So
right, I think he's just safely a platoon guy. I'm a little worried about the power. I think the speed holds on a bit longer. I mean, the swing and miss isn't terrible. Like he's still useful, but you could see where because of the personnel they have, they can lean a bit less on Cedric Mullins. Do you think that number on Tyler O'Neill, 482 plate appearances, is purely the function of health? I mean, like he's had a very difficult time staying healthy in his big league career. If he's not
a
healthy,
small side platoon guy.
He's a max guy for them. Look what they're paying him.
Yeah, that is interesting to look at plate appearances like this and be like, oh, he's not in the circle of trust. But then you're like, no. If I'm filling out the lineup tonight, Tyler O'Neill is in.
Right, it's the Buxton
I'm
effect.
not looking at the handedness of the other side. If I'm filling out the lineup tonight, the guys that I'm putting in without looking at the handedness of the other guy are Henderson, Rutschman, Westberg, Cowser, and O'Neill. I think that's it. And then I look at the handedness and go, oh, is it a lefty or is it a righty? Is it righty? Cedric Mullins is in.
I will submit Jackson Holliday's name to the discussion as the other guy, because you named 5, one was a catcher, so there could be a 6th. Is Jackson Holliday capable of breaking through and just being an everyday guy in year 2?
Yeah, it is one of those things. I know this has nothing to do with this division, but we were talking about Jordan Lawler on the pod, and I just wonder, do you bring up a Jackson? They're sort of talking about Jordan Lawler as like, oh, he's going to play where he's going to play every day, which is probably the minors, And so I just wonder with Jackson Holliday is like, do you have him in the majors to be big side platoon with Ramon Urias? I don't think so. Is that the plan?
I really don't think so. I think you're okay
What's the
not
plan if
playing
you don't think
Urias
he's
a lot.
ready then, and you want him to play in the minors? Urias and Mateo split second?
It's two righties. I don't think you necessarily would do that. Move Westburg over,
missing?
play Mayo. Play Mayo more.
Mayo could beat Holiday out in the spring. That could be a kind of under the radar kind of battle. Yeah. Yeah.
The ongoing frustration with the Orioles and how they're built. I mean, the departure of Anthony Santander was supposed to help in the outfield in the sense of opening up. That's why the signing of Tyler O'Neill was so surprising, because at the time we're like, oh, okay, it's the Heston Kjerstad show now. And nope, not on paper, not yet.
Yeah, first base DH is just as complicated as what we just waded through. I mean, if you're drawing July straight projections, Holiday wins the battle, Mayo goes down, and that's chalk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But chalk over at 1B DH is not as obvious because of defensive value. Like, I had people telling me that Heston Kjerstad is not even good at first base.
Well, then he has to be the DH, and that means they have to not.
He's playing DH
Ryan
in
O'Hearn.
spring.
Yeah,
he's playing DH in spring. So, and Heston is a lefty. O'Hearn is
lefty.
A lefty, and Ryan Mountcastle,
the righty,
is a righty. But Mountcastle has the best projection. I think O'Hearn has the best projection once you include defense.
Why are you here, Ryan O'Hearn?
I mean, the trio is all pretty good, and Mountcastle just seems too good to be small side platoon. So that's the problem: is you have a righty that's pretty good, and then you have two lefties, and you have two positions. So there's going to be some weird. I think he makes the roster though, Kjerstad. I mean, if we're just building a bench for the Orioles, what do we say here? We said that because some of it has to do with Mateo's health. Mateo might not make opening day, but let's say Mateo makes opening day. So we're talking about maybe a week after opening day or 2 weeks after opening day if we're not talking about opening. Mateo makes this bench. Laureano makes this bench. They are locks. I think Urias is a lock. Wait, that doesn't make sense.
No, roster resource has Mateo. Well, he's hurt right now, so I don't know.
Right.
He had internal brace surgery, so he's probably. I would assume maybe he's on the IL to begin the year. At least that's one of the possibilities.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, once he's healthy, what is this bench? I can't even make it because because you can have Mountcastle and O'Hearn. So so the four bench pieces would be Gary Sanchez, Ramon Urias, Mateo, and Ramon Laureano. That's it.
And Kjerstad's got options, so if he's not hitting, he goes down.
So maybe Kjerstad makes opening day because Mateo doesn't, but that is a little bit interesting because who's the backup shortstop? That means that Jackson Holiday is going to make this team.
Yeah, Jackson Holiday, I guess, would be the backup shortstop. Or you could, Ramon Urias probably could be a backup shortstop in a pinch, right? What? He's not a bad defender.
No, all right. Yeah, sure.
I mean, you're not expecting him to do it. It's more a gunner gets hurt in a game, so who plays it? Sure, you throw him out there for a few innings, and the next day you call up someone from AAA or something.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's the level.
I do think it gives a little bit of a nudge to Holiday over Mayo because Mayo can't play short.
Oh, they still just need to make a trade. Just do it already. Come on, Orioles. What are we doing out here?
The problem is that the surplus here, that if you think about this from the way the Orioles think about things, they've been trading away guys that are not huge. Like they don't have great defensive value. They're old. So like they would love to trade away maybe Kjerstad or Mountcastle or O'Hearn, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on what their return was. The return on guys like that is not big on the market.
No, it's going to be a full freight back end starter at an 8 figures per year, 10, 12, 15 million. You're not getting an undervalued pitcher.
Yeah.
In that instance, if you're trading even Kjerstad, who still is interesting if he gets an opportunity. The pitching, I think, is fine. I think we talked to him about how much we like Grayson Rodriguez during the starting pitcher preview. It's kind of important.
My favorite, breakout into an ace level guy this year. I think he's got everything he needs. It's sort of like he's even with Hunter Brown on projections, but he has not yet made the adjustment that Hunter Brown made. So what if he makes that next adjustment and just blows up? And I think the sweeper could be that. He's throwing the sweeper right now.
Yeah, and I think losing Corbin Burnes stings. It does. Like there was no scenario in which the Orioles lost Corbin Burnes and then didn't go out and get Snell or Fried or something where you'd say, okay, they're fine. Like, it's going to put strain on the mid and back end starters to exceed expectations. Zach Eflin was the guy they brought in at the trade deadline last year, so that's made the upgrade kind of early. Part of the problem, they brought in Tomoyuki Sugano and Charlie Morton for some veteran innings. I think the projections are really bleak on Sugano. A 4.74 ERA in that ballpark. I mean, I know we're not expecting massive strikeout rates.
Striking out 18% of the guys he saw in Japan.
Yeah, they had are you just expecting a Miles Michaelis type outcome though, where the ERA comes in a run lower than the projection? I think that's got to be something along the lines of what they're expecting from him.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Michaelis-like. I mean, he does have command, and I do think he has at least one out pitch. So they're saying, hey, lots of pitches, one out pitch, good command. But when I look at this roster, I see a 1, a 2, 3, and a bunch of 5s.
Yeah, to me, it's more of a problem come playoff time.
Yeah,
I think this is fine.
Who starts game 3?
Right. This can get you through the regular season if everyone stays healthy. And then the other question is, well, what's the bullpen like? I think they're going to lean pretty heavily on the bullpen because you looked at the bullpen projections for the AL East, and by ERA at least, the Orioles have the best bullpen in the division right now.
Yeah, there's a really interesting piece out from Louis Paulis, Pollis, who's a friend of the program. And Louis was looking at what happens if you lean heavily on your bullpen. And he was making the argument in a way for depth from your starters. And one thing that he came up with was, I'm trying to find it here. Every inning your starter, here it is. Each inning a starter pitches today lowers their team's relief ERA by 7 points tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
So I think this has been something that's been like putting unseen pressure on the Rays bullpen. And I think we've sometimes seen the Rays bullpen kind of fall apart due to health, due to, just like not being as good as we thought it was at the beginning of the season. And so they have to hope for some depth from their starters as well. And that's as any team should. But I was surprised when I saw this to see how good the Orioles bullpen comes out. I really like Felix Bautista. I really like Yennier Cano. And I think Seranthony Dominguez, he's really good when the command's there. And I was a little surprised at the money they gave Kittredge. I mean, they gave him $10 million. I don't know what they necessarily saw about that, but he's a high 3s ERA guy with a nondescript strikeout rate, but they really liked him, and it gives them a pretty good bullpen with different types of things. Cano is like the sinker guy. Seranthony Dominguez is blow you away with bad command. Felix Bautista is one of the 3 best relievers in baseball if he's healthy. So it's a good mix of stuff, but I don't like necessarily the starting pitching depth that much, and I wish they had a like true number 2 or maybe pocket aces or something like that. Seems more appropriate for the lineup on this team.
Yeah, that seems like the missing ingredient when you try to think about what the Orioles might be trying to acquire come trade deadline time this year. It's been a couple of frustrating deadlines for some fans out there, and maybe 2025 will bring a little bit more on that front. As far as the win total projection for the Orioles, 88.4, right there, about a half win behind what the Yankees had, according to Pacoda. Too hot, too cold, or just
That's
right
crazy.
For these Orioles.
Zips has them at 89 as well.
Some agreement.
That's really crazy. I'm gonna say too cold again. I mean, you're not going to win the AL East with 89.
I'm going to say it's just right because of the starting pitching concerns you outlined. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think it's going to be a little more of a sweat than it should be for a position player group that's as good as what the Orioles have put together for that core. Let's take a look at the Red Sox. A very busy offseason and a young wave of talent on the way. They were the late winners of the Alex Bregman sweepstakes. They did have new backup catcher Carlos Narvaez, but they did lose Tyler O'Neill and Danny Jansen along the way. Big trade, of course, during the winter meetings, bringing in Garrett Crochet. They signed Walker Buehler. They signed Aroldis Chapman and Justin Wilson for the bullpen. Patrick Sandoval is on a 2-year deal. He's out with Tommy John surgery this year. Out are Nick Pivetta, Kenley Jansen, and Chris Martin. So let's start with the bats, where we could take a look by plate appearances again. A little easy to see how the core comes together here, at least at the very top. Jarren Duran, Rafael Devers, Alex Bregman, all max volume players as your first 3. Tristan Cassis probably safely in there at number 4. He is by projections. I agree with that, but then you can see there is a dip of about 100 plate appearances before you find the 5th player, where Trevor Story with health.
I think it's a little bit like the Tyler O'Neill thing. Like,
yeah, he's the
healthy,
guy, but it's he just hasn't been, unfortunately. And I think the difference right now with the Red Sox is now that you have Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell both knocking on the door to take on prominent roles, is you feel a lot better about the scenarios in which Trevor Story's not healthy, right? You're better prepared for that now than you have been the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, because I think David Hamilton is probably my backup shortstop because he can handle with the glove, and Marcelo Meyer's not ready yet, and they're even talking about Marcelo Meyer playing different positions. I don't think Vaughn Grissom is going back to short. Ceddanne Rafaela was pretty bad there by the metrics, and I think the eye test as well. So I'm not putting him back at short. So I think David Hamilton's the backup plan, which is too bad because it doesn't give you an escape valve where you say, somebody plays short, and that's how we figure out this Alex Bregman, Rafael Devers crisis that's in the making. I mean, we're talking about Devers saying he doesn't want to come off third, and Bregman being a great third base defender. You can put Bregman at second. That's fine. I think that might be where we're headed. But if you don't, Masataka Yoshida's projection is too heavy.
Right. Yeah, that's the one that takes the biggest hit if you're not going to play Bregman
unless he's going to play over Wilyer Abreu. But Wilyer Abreu has the same bat projection and is a better glove in the outfield.
So, yeah, who do you think loses between Abreu and Yoshida? Who loses the playing time first?
Do they play Yoshida in the outfield to try and convince other teams to take him in a trade? Do they try it first and see how the defense looks? I mean, Wilyer Abreu probably even has options. I mean, he's just came up. Does Wilyer Abreu have options? Yes, he has options. So, I don't know. A 107 projection WRC plus for a corner outfielder is not even that great. You kind of want like a 102, 103, 104 anyway. So Yoshida doesn't have options. He's not going anywhere. So if he's not playing, that's just ridiculous. So I think Wilyer Abreu goes down in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, that does make the most sense just given what they can do. I mean, the way the bench is built right now, Hamilton, Romy Gonzalez, the backup catcher, Narvaez, they all have options. The only projected bench guy from Roster Resource who doesn't have options is Rob Refsnyder, who's almost 34 years old and is a small side platoon guy. So he's probably...
That's right on the DFA line.
Right. He's more likely to get DFA'd when the prospects are up and things get a little more crowded, right? So they do have pretty good flexibility with a few guys they can send down. I would agree with you if they're going to send someone down from the has a good projection group. It's just sort of Wilyer Abreu, and it's a tough outcome for a guy that looks like he could play on a lot of different teams.
It'd be great for this team if Christian Campbell or Roman Anthony played short. If they were having the kind of outcome that Marcelo Meyer is not having, that's where their biggest need is. But you look at that Ceddanne Rafaela bat projection, and I think Roman Anthony whenever he's ready, can take center field from Rafael and turn him into a super util. I mean, we said that because we looked at even the contract that Rafael has signed. It is the type of contract where they can still keep him around at that price, even as a utility guy.
I mean, he has options left too. You could option him if you feel like you don't want to send Yoshida or Abreu down, and you play Yoshida in one of the corners. You play Jarren Duran in center, and you say Rafaela goes back to AAA.
And who's the backup center fielder?
You do the same kind of thing. You just have to find someone you throw out there in the event of an emergency, and the next day, then you recall Rafaela to play center field. That's, I think, the other way they could handle it if they don't want to send a guy down.
I think the only way Rafaela goes down is if Anthony makes his team.
Well,
and I think that's
possible.
A long shot for this year.
It's still possible. A long shot for opening day, you're saying.
Yeah.
He's going to play in the big leagues this year.
But over the course of this year, that could be what we see. We could see Story get hurt, Hamilton play short, and Campbell come up to split time. I think Campbell was hurt a lot by Bregman's signing because it's just another infielder. It makes it harder to make it.
It just buys the Red Sox a little bit more time to figure out how they want to make the pieces fit with Christian Campbell. But if he hits enough, they can find a way. I think second base is that wide open spot in the depth chart. We say when he's ready, he's the guy at the keystone, and it could be a nice power speed combo right from the jump from Christian Campbell. And then the Anthony situation, that's what causes more of a roster squeeze because it's a corner outfield profile, right? So
I think he could play center the first couple of years he's in the big league. So
yeah, maybe that's part of the solution too. But
it's
again,
really hard to figure this one out. It's like it's a little bit of a Lego Rubik's Cube. There's some pieces that have to fall into place. It could all fall into place, great, but it's telling you right now how it's going to fall into place is pretty hard.
It's also kind of replicating the same problems we've discussed for a long time, though, with the Orioles depth chart. It's a good problem to have too many good players.
Oh, but this is one reason it's sort of important. The age, the Mets and Red Sox were the oldest lineups in baseball last year. On the left, you have the oldest lineups. On the right, you have the youngest lineups. What you might be surprised to see is that that age is correlated with success on the team level. And I think this is because of free agency, of if you are 28, then you have made it as a player, right? There's a lot of survivor bias in this. Whereas like if you're a 27-year-old lineup, you're the Nationals, You're a young lineup where you haven't sorted through all the guys and kind of added the free agents, and you know what I'm saying? So like you see a lot of rebuilding teams here on the right as the youngest teams. The Pirates are one of the youngest lineups in baseball. The Cardinals, the Giants, the Nationals, the Tigers, the Guardians. So those are the youngest teams. The Marlins are right there. And of course, they're not among the best yet until they start adding free agents and kind of sorting through the young guys. So it's not bad that the Red Sox were the second oldest lineup in baseball, but I do think it's good that they, have this infusion of youth coming. I think when you really lock in, like the Astros being on the Dodgers being like the 8th and 9th oldest lineups, that says to me that they're also infusing youth. I think being the Mets, you could see at times that they look like an old lineup last year, and you're excited about some of the young guys on the Mets, stepping forward like Vientos and Alvarez to change that math a little bit.
So the fun fact I found while doing some research for this episode is that PECOTA has a runs allowed projection of 746 this year for the Red Sox. And most people don't think about runs in a season in their day-to-day life. So everyone's like, what does that even mean? For context, the A's are projected to allow 754 runs by PECOTA. That's surprising, right? When you think about the Red Sox, especially in an offseason in which they added Garrett Crochet to the top of the rotation, fortified the bullpen, and even if Walker Buehler's more of a number 4 these days than a 1 or a 2, they at least replaced Nick Pivetta and then got an upgrade at the top of the rotation. You would think that number might be lower. It just seems like there's a lot of disagreement about the quality of this pitching staff. And the wild card for me that we didn't talk a lot about this winter is Lucas Giolito, who seems to be further along in his recovery from elbow surgery than we thought going into the offseason. It looks like he's going to be available around the start of the season, if not at the start of the season, which is good news. It's one more possible quality pitcher in the middle or back end of the rotation. So where do you fall on the quality of the Red Sox pitching as a whole, because I think that really has to have a big influence on how you feel about what their outlook looks like in 2025 as a team.
I mean, one of the things that's so difficult out of this is that Fenway is the second toughest park in baseball for pitchers. You know, it doesn't necessarily inflate homers, but it inflates everything else, every ball in play. And so that's why you'll see even good pitchers on this list with slightly higher ERAs. As much as I love Brian Bayo and I've got him in a lot of places, you know, I'm trying to take him somewhere where I might be able to play him on the road a little bit more than home. You've seen Cutter Crawford has like a point and a half or something of ERA differential between home and away. And that's just going to be something that they have to figure out over the course of their careers. And so when you look at the ERA column, you're not going to be impressed with the quality of this rotation, but to have them come sixth, you know, overall, once you kind of, you know, look at FIP or just look at value overall, once it's park adjusted, I think that this feels actually like a pretty good rotation because Giolito's and Buehler are guys that could find old levels of production. Crochet, I think, is one of the, you know, on a per inning basis, one of the three best starters in baseball. Bayo is a young changeup artist that's coming up that could put it together. And Tanner Houck just had a great season. So you've got young guys that are kind of in the midst of putting together, old guys that could bounce back, and one of the three best starters in baseball. That seems like it should actually be at least a top 10 rotation. And so 6 doesn't seem that weird. You saw in the bullpen projection that this bullpen is not projected to be a strength. That is a little bit where it falls apart for me. I know that ERA is not the best way to judge them, but I do think Aroldis Chapman and Liam Hendriks as a duo at closer is probably bottom 5 or bottom 10 in the league, with Chapman's age and command problems and Liam Hendriks coming back from injury. And then behind them, I like Winkowski a little bit. You know, they've got some pieces. Slayton's all right, but I think this is a bottom half, maybe bottom third bullpen for me.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll exceed in that area. That I'm intrigued by the group. I think Liam Hendriks, maybe it's because you just like, he seems like a guy you want to root for. You say, hey, like maybe he comes back and he has that Kirby Yates sort of season where it's like, oh, late 30s, coming off injuries, still really good. Like that could be in the range of outcomes. Might be the top 10% sort of possibility for him, but the projections are a little light. 4.01 ERA for Liam Hendriks as a reliever would be pretty odd. That means the stuff didn't come back post-injury if that's how it turns out for him. But I do think the pitching is where the questions lie with this team overall. And I think I'm with you. I think the rotation's a little bit underrated overall by some of the folks out there because of the way Fenway plays. Now let's take a look at the PECOTA win total projection for the Red Sox, 79.7. I was surprised when I saw that number.
How can I be cold on 3? it's going to flip. I think you'll see me change, but I think this is too cold too. I think that's a team that can put it together. I
don't know where all these wins are coming from, but
I know that's right. I have to be too hot on something.
This has to. How does this math even work? Everything's too cold. Everyone's.
I think you may
more.
find that I'm more pessimistic about the Blue Jays and Rays in projections. Let's see.
Okay, maybe that's where the leak actually is. So let's get to the Rays next. They took 4th in division last year. And let's sort by plate appearances again as we look at the Bat X projections for this team. Go away. Alexander Canario, thank you very much. Okay, who are the 5 for the Rays? Whenever we build a bench, like 88% of the time we're talking about the Rays, which is kind of ridiculous. There's 30 teams in the league. They all have benches. But the Rays
definitely inspired
bench,
the whole thing.
Massive word cloud. Mitch Keller, Victor Robles, Billy Cook. It's all in there. Yandy Diaz has the highest playing time projection of the bunch. Okay, sure. I guess that still makes
projection.
Sense. Boy, that's still a 130 WRC plus. Is it fair to say that Yandy Diaz, despite the projections doing this pretty much every year, is one of the more underrated players in just general baseball conversation?
100%. Also, pythons.
I mean, yes, it's just absurd.
Just massive biceps.
But I think one One thing I like about this Rays team is that because of all the mixing and matching, and because of the way they just Frankenstein it together so often, when a player like Junior Caminero comes to the system, they could make room. They could just make him an everyday guy, and they don't have to mess around, and they don't have the too many good players problem. How does the starting lineup fit problem? They don't have the Orioles problem today, right? You can look at Junior Caminero and say he is an everyday guy on this team, and we largely can trust these projections, even though he spent very little time in the big leagues. And I think he's important for them. Like if they're going to be a surprise playoff team again in 2025, Junior Caminero being up all year, playing really well, I think is a huge part of how this lineup gets there.
Yeah. The top three being right-handers is interesting, but like I said before with a couple other right-handers, if you think that they're quality, then you're not going to stick these guys in short side platoon. And so then you're going to give them max playing time. So I think Diaz, Caminero, and Morel are kind of max playing time guys. If you shade Morel's plate appearance level, it's the chance that he's just not good. I mean, there's a chance he's not good. You know, like he has fundamental flaws in his approach to the game, his contact rates, his OBP. Like, you know, he has to make powerful contact a lot. It's almost like a Siri-esque profile. It's not quite as extreme, but he has to make powerful contact and kind of slug his way to that WRC plus. It's not something that's going to come through OBP at all. And you know, if he craters and is hitting 180 again. I think that's going to take so much value out of the occasional pop that he may just drop out of the circle of trust. And I don't know what the bottom is. Like I think he is a fascinating player because the ceiling is still interesting, but the floor is through the floor. Like it's like zero. It's a nothing. It's a short tied platoon that they just keep around because they traded for him.
I think the biggest flaw for Christopher Morel is the lack of a position. I actually think because he pops in Seager, his swing decisions are better than you'd think for a guy who strikes out as often as he does. I'm probably yet again drifting into that space where I am deferring to the Rays and saying, you know what, they get away with this all the time. Maybe I'm doing that a little bit. I think they're going to find a use for Christopher Morel. I think the depth chart is soft enough where a guy that's projected for a 114 WRC plus has a home as part of their core 5 players. I do think,
and the worst projection for him, it is not just like a bad X remnant. I mean, the worst projection for him is ATC at 104, and Oopsie has him at 128. So I mean, I just think he's I guess what I should have been saying is wide variance. I find him a very wide variance player. So if I really wanted to create a circle of trust where I'm like, hey, before the season, I know this guy's going to be playing every day all the way through the season. I have Diaz and Caminero, and that's it. It's done. The list is over. It's a rule of 2 for these guys because Josh Lowe and Brandon Lau are platoon guys so far in their careers. Kim is hurt. DeLuca hasn't established himself. You know, a lot of those other guys are lefties. They have righties in their core, and lefties they kind of put around that core. I don't know. I'm throwing my hands up in disgust.
I am throwing my hands up in, I love these messy depth charts because I root for a team that has one like this. I think it's Yandy, Junior Caminero, Morel, and then Eloy, and when healthy, Ha-Seong Kim. That's their 5. And then Josh Lowe and Brandon Lau.
Are they all 5 righties? Did you just put 5 righties in the circle of trust?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Because I'm a madman. I think Christopher Morel is going to hit 35 home runs this year.
Wow.
35.
We got a bold prediction. That's the
bold
first
prediction.
of the pod. Here we go.
I got some gummy bears that have tahini on them.
That's Morel.
five spicy gummy bears on that hot take. I think 35 homers for Christopher Morel incoming, and it's going to drive everybody crazy, including Cubs fans. And I'll take some joy in that. I will take delight in that. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Can we take bets on like which lefty could play into full time? I mean, I guess the lefty can't play into full time if the core is all righties.
Well, they could play close to it at least, or like not sit exclusively against lefties. Maybe that's the best case scenario. Probably Josh Lowe.
I guess, but if you look at his projection there with kind of the WRC plus there, you'd say, ooh, he might be below average against lefties theoretically, right? But then you look at the projection for Brandon Lau and you say, wow, a guy who's predicted to be from 114 to 131%, WRC plus, you would expect that guy to be 105, 110 against lefties. That's not been the case. That has not been the case. Although he has been 104 for his career. I'm saying Brandon Lau gets some playing time against lefties.
Yeah, maybe it's a revolving door where they give those guys early season opportunities and then dial it up based on who's healthy and on the roster for platoon partnerships too. But I don't know. That's my spicy take. 5 righties kind of popping for the Rays. I mean,
if you give those 5 guys circle of trust, then you actually don't need any of the lefties to play against lefties.
Right. And I'm probably wrong about at least one of the 2 dumb predictions I just made. But
I think it's Eloy because the projection 109 WRC plus is soft. The position, he has no position value. I think it's Eloy.
He dropped 30 pounds, and they're trying him at first base in the outfield. It's optimism season right now. Everything's coming up Eloy. Right. He got out of the south side of Chicago. He's no longer a member of the White Sox. Things can only get better for Eloy Jimenez at this point.
Center field for the squad. We've got righty Johnny DeLuca penciled in, a round league average with the bat. If he's small side platoon or if he's sharing the position, maybe it's Low. Who's he sharing the position with? I don't really see the center field situation like I usually do there.
Yeah, DeLuca could be the guy that breaks my all powerful prediction a little bit, just because of center field defense being important. That could drive his playing time, and he could end up being 5th in playing time on this team. I've just kept wondering with DeLuca, does he hit the ball hard enough to get to the power consistently? I think it might be a speed over everything sort of offensive profile. That plays fine in deeper leagues. I've just wondered if some of the stuff we saw from the minors is just not going to come over in terms of.
It's so weird because he did hit a ball 110 with the Dodgers in AAA, but he's 110.2. He 109.4 last year. That's borderline. It's not like Nolan Shanuel, level. It's not Luis Arias level. It is someone who could hit, 12 to 15 homers maybe with that max EV, but the barrel rates have not been there for him. And you're right. It's been mostly kind of like contact, not even patience, just sort of contact and speed and glove with the occasional homer. Chandler Simpson is a name that everyone should know. Because he's still with the major league team. I bet you he'll be one of those guys who plays for a couple weeks and then goes down to the minor league camp at some point. But and he has no power at all, maybe. But I think his defense is far superior to Johnny DeLuca. So DeLuca is out there, and his defense is only mediocre in center. And he's not showing much pop, then they could say, let's just take a guy with elite speed and elite glove and just seed pop at the position.
Sounds like a nice deep sleeper there in Chandler Simpson. Let's flip it over to the pitching side, where not pitching in the Trop this year is going to make life more difficult. I think you're going to see that reflected in home run rates. More homers is probably the across the board sort of adjustment. We know the Trop also boosts Ks, so maybe they get closer to neutral in terms of a strikeout rate park factor. The big tension in this situation, though, comes from the Rays have good pitchers that you weren't just streaming at home because of the park. They were good enough to be used on the road, even in some tough matchups. It's more questions of health, right? Shane McClanahan coming off a second TJ, Shane Baz slowly getting that stuff back late last year. Maybe didn't look quite as crisp as he did pre-injury, but maybe a full off season gives him a chance to beat his projections a bit. You've talked a lot about Ryan Pepio this winter as someone you really like. Drew Rasmussen's healthy again. They're stretching him out. We'll see how that goes. The ongoing questions about Taj Bradley and whether or not he can find another pitch that works consistently for him, find something that maybe changes the timing of hitters. That's the main problem for Taj Bradley. Everything is in the same velocity band. Like you gotta throw off timing if that's going to be the approach. I think this is still a good rotation all across the board. Like I've found in drafts they're a little underpriced, maybe because of an overcorrection of moving out of the Trop. Have you found the same?
I have found the same. I've ended up with a lot of Pepio. I've been tempted by Bradley and McClanahan. I'm a little bit more nervous about Littell and Boz, just given the state of Boz's sort of stuff fluctuation and Littell's lack of stuff. A little bit worried. And then Drew Rasmussen sort of lurking, Boz with options and, Littell being a guy who used to be a reliever. So, could one of those guys, if they all stay healthy, one of those guys is ceding their spot to Rasmussen at some point, I think, and so there's a little bit of performance risk as well as role risk with Boz and Littell. So I haven't really jumped at them as much. But Pepio, I think, is interesting because as a 27-year-old with 208 innings, of relatively stable production, if you look at what he's done in the major leagues, I find that he is actually fairly projectable in terms of easy to project. And yet you still see a range of oopsie 366 to the bat 413, steamer 418. And I would assume that has to do with some of the modeling of the park. And that's a half a run of ERA difference between them. I guess, Shane McClanahan, other than the injury, I guess, would also be someone that you would find to be easy to project. And his range is from 382 to 325. So again, you find the sort of half run differential. I don't know. I know the park is going to play harder, but when it comes to Bradley, McClanahan, and Pepio, I think they can still give you the strikeouts you want, even if the ERA is closer to 3.8.
All right. Well, I'm in on that trio, but I think I like Boz even a little more than Bradley, even though we've seen more strikeouts from Bradley. So put me down for optimism on Shane Boz. The bullpen we talked about in the reliever preview a bit, Pete Fairbanks, the stuff just took a step back last year in a way where you really have to look and say, who else would I speculate on if I'm looking for saves in Tampa Bay? Because the stuff coming down and the injury history for Fairbanks probably leaves the door open at some point for one of the relievers to close out a lot of games. Edwin Uceta did it really well at the end of last season, so maybe he'd be the first one in just based on that usage, but no shortage of intriguing names, which is always the case in this Rays bullpen. And Hunter Biggie's a guy that if you said, who do you think really ends the year as the Rays closer? I think Hunter Biggie might be my deep sleeper for this division for the relievers.
Yeah, and then Mason Montgomery is really, really exciting as well. I don't know, they are getting a little bit older in the tooth in the bullpen. There's some guys that don't have options, so maybe they just send Montgomery down at first. But this is a lefty with 121 stuff plus that has had strikeout rates north of 30% while he was starting. I guess the only thing that you could think of is maybe they send him back down because he was even starting some last year. Maybe they send him back down to start.
You keep starting him, man. Like don't make that guy a reliever yet.
Yeah, but he is super exciting. So I guess I would guess, and then, another one that people have been betting on is Edwin Uceta because he got some saves last year, but that 107 stuff plus to Hunter Biggie's 114 stuff plus, I think that they trend to, they seem to know about stuff plus. They seem to have their own number. They lead it in it. And that's partly a park factor, but I think it's also an organizational tendency that this is a stat they value. So, I might have Hunter Biggie a step ahead of Uceta, especially once you consider draft costs. And in leagues where these guys are being taken, drafting holds and stuff, Uceta is being taken 10 rounds ahead of Biggie. And I'll take 10 rounds of picks and then Hunter Biggie for sure.
Yeah. All in all, though, very nice deep group for this Rays bullpen yet again. Bakota has what do we got? 82.2? Yeah, 82.2. On the Rays. I was looking at the loss column at first. 82.2, too hot, too cold, or just right for these Rays.
Well, I can't be too cold on everybody, and I'm just going to say just right.
Can I be too cold on everybody? I think I can be. Am I allowed to? Can I get away with that? I just don't like betting against this team, man. They find a way. They're like the Guardians, like the Brewers. They just find a way. Projections never seem to like them. And I increasingly lean more towards teams that the projections don't like. So I'll say it's a little bit light on these Rays. I think the pitching is better than people realize, and they'll find a way to deal with the Steinbrenner Field effect. And then it's going to boost the bats a little bit too and answer a few questions, I think, along the way. One more team to get to here. We'll try to speed through it, not because they're not important, but because we have a meeting coming up. The Blue Jays. I think they had a little bit of an underrated offseason. They bring in Anthony Santander for some thump. That's good. They make the trade for Andres Gimenez, great defender at second base, solid player, trying to make a tweak to get him back to the levels of a couple seasons ago. Even if they don't do that, I think they're better having him than they were before they made that trade. Spencer Horwitz is out. Wasn't a huge part of their long-term future, but an intriguing player nonetheless. So it wasn't like it cost them nothing. Rotation maybe a little bit underrated. I don't know. I just look at this team and they finished second for a lot of prospects, which is or a lot of free agents, that is, which is frustrating for fans to have to deal with that. But they added Max Scherzer, they added Jeff Hoffman to the bullpen. Jordan Romano was hurt a lot last year, so losing him doesn't sting quite as badly when you bring in a guy as good as Hoffman. They also brought Yimi Garcia back and got Nick Sandlin in the trade that brought Andres Gimenez up. So I do think the Blue Jays quietly did a good job this offseason, even though the moves weren't quite as splashy as some of the things that other big market teams did.
I hated their offseason. Just thought it was awful all around. I think I think Anthony Santander is one of the biggest traps in free agency.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that for as long as they did, but for this year, it makes them better.
Yeah, Horwitz, I think was actually surprisingly important because he was they have so many guys that come up that are pull fly ball guys, and I like that. But, you can look at Davis Schneider and figure out right away what happens if pull fly ball is the only tool in your toolbox. You start getting found out, you start striking out a lot, and your ceiling is lowered. And I think that's a little bit of a problem for Addison Barger as well. It's definitely a problem for Dalton Varsho. Now you talk about George Springer is in the twilight of his career. Bo Bichette is not projected to be that great of a bounce back. And, I'm being pessimistic here, but you could look at this lineup and say there are two bats that are above average.
That is an extreme round down, but I guess possible.
But I'm just taking all the guys, like when I took the guys on the Orioles that were 97 and 98 and made them 100, I'm taking all the guys here that are 100, 103 and rounding them down.
Yeah. And that is what you're doing. It's a jerk move.
So I recognize that I'm being pessimistic, but in order to give them some grace, what I want to say is that I think this is one of the most difficult times for an organization, which is nearing the end of a window. I think they had a window that was really great, and they didn't necessarily capitalize on it all the way. And then when you near the end of it, what do you do? Do you, like the Astros, do you maybe trade Kyle Tucker a year early, but also, spend on free agency and maybe make some poor decisions like Jose Abreu and stuff? Do you try to keep the window open that way? They seem to be like, we're trying to put little pieces around this aging core and just get a little bit better in a lot of places and hope that Bo Bichette just has a vintage Bo Bichette season. And George Springer has one last ride in him, and Andres Gimenez, we are going to tweak him, but it just seems like lipstick on a pig a little bit. It's like, what am I putting my hands into and saying, this is what's going to happen with the Blue Jays. This is what I'm excited about. Guerrero and I think it's when you said I was being pessimistic about the Yankees, I think to tell the story of the Blue Jays being like a contender for the top this year, you have to be as optimistic as I was pessimistic about the Yankees. And I was just playing pessimist. So just to play optimist, you have to be okay, yes, Bo Bichette's going to bounce back. Springer's going to be good. Santander is not going to take a step backward. Andres Gimenez is going to find out that power that he's missing. Dalton Varsho is going to stay healthy all year. Alejandro Kirk is going to stay healthy all year. And the old guys we have in the rotation we haven't even talked about yet, they're all going to be good too, despite declining stuff for all of them.
So I guess you won't be doing radio hits in Toronto this summer. I guess I'll take those on for you just to not make tensions worse.
They do call me a fair amount.
Yeah, no, Blake's awesome. Blake Murphy does a great job. But I think what we have on the screen is the Bad X projection, easily the worst projection you'll find on Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette's been 20% better than league average all 5 seasons he's played in the big leagues except for 2024. Mm-hmm. He was hurt last year. I just think the Bo Bichette projection from the Bat X reminds me of the time the On Fire garbage truck dumped its load out in the intersection right outside my window a few years ago. Like that is a ridiculously bad projection. And I look at him like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Sure, the stolen bases are flimsy. I think he's a good hitter. I think he's still young enough where his approach will still work for a bit longer. So I think if you look at the bright side on Bo Bichette and you still have a nice core with him and Vlad, you see decent secondary supporting cast. I think they do some things differently with this roster. I think they have deep sleepers that could emerge that are kind of interesting.
I have a lot of shares of Jimenez. I'm not fully out on every player or anything. I have a lot of shares of Jimenez because I think that he gives you non-zero power and a lot of steals in second base. I think he's been undervalued at second base in drafts that I've done. And I have some shares of Bowden Francis, and I do believe that I have Max Scherzer too low. One thing that I wanted to just point out about Bowden Francis is that this is interesting too. You see the arm angle. You can see how all of his pitches are along like his arm angle.
Yeah, they're just the perfect diagonal. Yeah,
it does mean that he doesn't really have deceptive movement, that his arm angle produces the movement you kind of expect, but there's a little bit more ride than you expect on the four seam, which is good. But also what I want to point out is one of BP's Arsenal metrics was about kind of the space that you occupy with your movement, how big of a spread it is. And you can see that this has got to be one of the bigger spreads in baseball. In fact, I think that he was number one in their movement spread profile, because you see that curveball all the way out there, in the 24 circle, and then the four seam way up there in the 24 circle. This is a large spread of movements that batters have to honor, and that splitter has really been the important. You can see how that splitter occupies a place that is super important and has been the breakout for him. So I know that Bowden Francis was so great last year that he's going to regress, but I found times when I think people overcorrect for that. So the Blue Jays bullpen also not great.
But look at it compared to what the Rays and Red Sox are projected to do. I just think it's not lagging that far behind. I think I'm pretty optimistic about Hoffman in particular just being the answer in the ninth inning. I think there's a little more depth here than they're getting credit for. That Nick Sandlin addition, for example, I think is kind of nice. And they've got Eric Swanson, Yimi Garcia, Chad Green. I don't know.
Yimi Garcia is an underrated reliever for sure. And I like Chad Green, so it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
I think it's a little bit better.
I'd take this bullpen over the Sox bullpen.
Okay. See, now we're building something. I think Kevin Gausman started the year hurt, wasn't quite himself all year. Maybe you get a little bit of bounce back from him. Chris Bassett had the bad outcome in his range of outcomes last year.
Looked pretty good in his first start.
Yeah, man. Like I don't think this is lipstick on a pig. I think it's Lodem. I think it's Lodem. I need a Blue Jays t-shirt with Lodem in their the number that they like the numbers that they have on the uniforms, the font type.
Oh, that weird, like the kind of
lines,
the strike through it.
Yeah, man. I like those.
That would look good. Lodem would look good in that. Yeah.
Oh, we got to get that made. That has got to happen. All right. So time is at a premium here. So we're going to get to our sleepers real quick. Sleeper hitter from the AL East. I'll go first from this Blue Jays team. Alan Roden. Deep cut. Give me some Alan Roden.
What?
But I take your guy?
No, what? Tell me about Alan Roden. Like, he's
Alan
not on
Roden.
my radar at all.
You're not on Alan Roden from Creighton?
No, I'm not. Tell me about it.
The third rounder out of Creighton. Look at his OBPs, man. He runs high OBPs. He's got power.
What team is he on?
He's a Blue Jay.
Okay.
He got to AAA last year.
All right.
He's a leaderboard guy. He's an outfielder, man. Like Alan Roden, dude. I didn't just make that up.
I'm not accusing you of making it up.
And
he's going to take over. Does he play center? Is he going to take over for Varsho? Or
I don't think he's going to play center. He's got 40-45 scouting grades, so I think it's a little more of corner. But I think he is kind of like an outfield version of Spencer Horwitz with some speed. That's better than Spencer Horwitz. Give me some Alan Roden.
All right. I like it. I'll take it. Who is I guess I'm going to go with Andres Gimenez, actually, for all of the talk that I had. One thing that I found is just that he represents a little bit of a drop off when it comes to talent pool at second base. If you just look at the BAT X projections for second base, You get Andres Gimenez at $7. This is $7 in a 12-teamer. If I make it 15 with an MI, it's going to go up a little bit. But let me see here. With 15 with an MI, he's a $14 player. There's Bryson Stott behind him. And what I've circled usually in drafts is Andres Gimenez and Bryson Stott, because they're kind of similar if you just go by projections. They're going to give you stolen bases. You don't know what the power is going to be. The average might be okay. They're very similar players, actually. And so I've circled them. I don't really want Gleyber Torres in Detroit. Luis Arias is a very build-specific guy. I'm just listing the guys behind him, Luis Arias is very build-specific where, yes, I'd be excited to get him in certain builds. Other builds where my batting average is good, I don't want him, Christopher Morales is kind of similar where it's like, if my batting average is soft at all, I'd be a little bit worried about putting Morel in there. I don't really like India and Kansas City, although that might be where I go if things go poorly and Jimenez and Stott go right before me, and I waited too long. Geloff is a batting average risk. Cronenworth is okay, but now you're starting to leave like starting second base behind because Cronenworth's 16th. So Jimenez to me is like a pocket, end of a tier, and so that's why he's ended up in a fair amount of my teams.
All right, I'm on it.
And that's without saying like he needs to get power back. That's just hit me 10 homers, steal me 30 bases, and hit 260 or whatever. Then you'll still be a good spot in drafts.
All right, my sleeper starting pitcher from this group, just an underrated guy, not a sleeper. I think Tanner Houck. I'm buying into the Tanner Houck, Logan Webb 2.0 narrative that I created a few weeks ago, which is just getting high on my own fumes, but hey, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, but Tanner Houck already took the step forward. So for me, sleeper is someone who hasn't taken the step forward, and a lot of times you have to kind of look beyond what's in front of you, and sort of think about like what they could do, or just like load him. So Brian Bayo is my load him guy.
Okay.
And like quite literally almost, because Stuff Plus says 97, Stuff Plus doesn't like him, gives him an 89 Stuff Plus on the changeup, and I think it's just wrong. I think it's a plus changeup, a pretty good slider like that can be average, a plus sinker. I think this is actually a pretty good package for Fenway, and I think it just needs a little tweak, like maybe a cutter. Maybe the four seam just takes a little leap forward this year, or maybe he just has like a good year command wise. I mean, this is the kind of pitcher where, just a slight uptick in command, and he could have, like Ranger Suarez or something, where it's just like, oh yeah, okay, this is his year, and he just seems he's been my load him sleeper. I've got a fair amount of shares of him because I just like pieces of it, and I think parts of it just could get a little better, and he'd be all of a sudden a 3.75 guy with just enough strikeouts and a lot of wins on that team.
Yeah, Bayo's definitely load him at this point. People are just not as excited about him as they were a couple of seasons ago, so he's fallen into that category. Last one is the sleeper reliever. I mentioned it when we were talking about the Rays. Hunter Biggie. I know it's going to be the Hunter Biggie went to Harvard. That's going to be the thing everyone says about him, because apparently you have to say that when someone goes to Harvard. But maybe 3 pitches out of the bullpen, fastball, slider are really good. We'll see if that curveball comes through too. Tons of strikeouts. I think he finishes the year as the Rays closer, even though there could be a few other options ahead of him in that pecking order initially.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Yimi Garcia just because I'm worried. The Jeff Hoffman injury concerns that came up and the concerns about his physical, it could just be that they didn't think that he could start and that this was, so they had to change the number and then he didn't want to change the number or whatever it was. I mean, it could just been negotiation. But just the fact that came up makes me look at who's behind him. Chad Green could close. So if you want to make it co-sleepers, but Yimi Garcia is the model guy. He strikes out more guys. Had a 122 stuff plus. Still has a nice 7-mile-an-hour fastball. So Yimi Garcia is a sleeper for me at reliever in the AL East.
There you go. One more note from Alan Roden's track record now. He's been a Blue Jay both in college and in the big leagues. Creighton, of course, the Blue Jays, as our producer Brian Smith points out. So forever a Blue Jay. We are going to go. And by the way, I don't think either one of us could pass a big league physical. I'm convinced neither one of us would pass. Like that we'd be Aside from not having the talent anyway, wouldn't pass.
When I threw, Robert Stock said, do you have a shoulder injury? Because that's what it looks like when you throw it. I'm like, maybe. I don't know. No one's ever imaged my shoulder.
I'd love to know how many problems I've developed despite being a terrible athlete. That would be phenomenal. Join the Discord, the link in the show description. You can find us on Bluesky. Eno is enosarris.bsky.social. I'm dvr.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. We are back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.